everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage, aka Sia on camera on the internet. If you're unfamiliar with the show, this show is all about the destigmatization of sex work, and I bring different individuals on every single week to talk about where they are in the sex industry, how they got started, adjacent organizations that are helping sex workers, lots of advocacy work in the show as well. I myself am a sex worker. I've been in the industry for over a decade in various capacities, as I'm sure a lot of us have dabbled our feet and toes into different corners of the industry. Myself, currently an online content creator on various platforms like OnlyFans, Sex Panther, etc. I'm also a live cam model as well on StreamMate, and was a sugar baby for many years, and that was kind of my start in the industry. So really want to be able to humanize and educate folks on the industry, because our industry is very misunderstood. There is a lot of people that don't understand it, people that make a lot of different assumptions around it as well. And this shows to give voice to the people in terms of like, let me tell you how it really is, in terms of the work that we do and the nature around it, the issues and challenges that we deal with. So this week is no different. I'm actually really excited to bring this person on today, and the topic we'll be discussing a new paid companionship platform that is newly launched earlier this year in January. I'm super excited to talk about it, and I'm sure you all are also very curious, because I did have a lot of you chiming into the discussion when I initially posted this on Twitter. So we will be bringing the founder on today to speak to that, to answer all questions that you might have. There are lots of burning questions, and we'll try to cover as much as we can, because there's a lot of interest sparked around this particular topic and this particular platform called Choice. But before we get started, I'm just wanting to say hello to all the wonderful Patreon subscribers. Again, thank you so much for your support over the past few years. It's been incredibly humbling, and really just refreshing and nice to know that you guys are wanting to support the show and that you find value in the show as a resource. I do want to say hello to those who are on the third tier. You all get a nice little fan recognition shout out. The newest member here, Dale Flood, who is local. Hello and welcome. We've got Red Door Products from Seattle. We've got McKenna King from Edmonton. We got Bia York, also from the Seattle area. Eric Arajo. We've got Geyser, and we've got Snoo all the way from Germany. Thank you guys so much for your financial support. As you know, and if you heard on every single episode, all of your funds are going towards just hosting my website, some adult industry conventions and events. That probably isn't going to be happening anytime soon. So right now, all your money is just going to hosting my website online, strippedbyc.com. So thank you so much. I'm hoping that you guys are continuing to enjoy the episodes and the topics. If you are a member on there, if you are a patron, you do get access to all of the bonus episodes that are not publicly available. You also get video access to all of the episodes way ahead of schedule. Right now, it's like weeks in advance at this point, which is really great. I'm on top of my shit, which is awesome. And you do get to see like who I'll be bringing on, what kind of topics I'm hoping to tackle, people I'm trying to track down and source for upcoming episodes for the remainder of season 7. So lots of good goodies on there. So if you are interested in becoming a patron, you can check it out. It's patreon.com/strippedbycia. And now we're going to get into the meat and bones of the episode, which I'm really excited about, hence why I'm talking really fast. But also talking really fast because it's 8 o'clock my time, but it's also 5 p.m. in his time. So we're going to be chatting over the next hour, and it's huge time difference here. So bear with us. But please welcome to the show. We have Arik Bruckner joining us on the show, hailing from Zurich, Switzerland. He's a tech entrepreneur who is the founder of Choice, which we'll be learning about amongst other companies that he has founded as well. It's a little bit of a different perspective that we'll be getting today. We don't always often get the founders of companies onto the show, but I'm really excited for him to share and talk to us about Choice today. Arik, are you here? Welcome in.
Yeah, hi, and thanks a lot for having me. So pleasure to be here.
We're very excited. As I mentioned, lots of interest and spark around choice right now. Before we kind of get into that, I know everyone's just really dying to know more about this platform. Arik, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe some background, and maybe the story in terms of how you got here and founding choice?
Sure, yeah, happy to. So my background is actually in economics, like from a study perspective, and like economics, and I did a minor in neuroinformatics as well. So my professional background is in tech. So the better part of my life I spent in tech, previously helping bootstrap a company that's a sales app for large enterprises or large corporations. Um, and then so until exit, and after that I took some time off and really thought about what I wanted to do next. And it was clear to me that I wanted to found another tech venture. I just wasn't sure in which area and wasn't sure like in which format. So after really thinking, I just didn't want to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning anymore, helping large corporations make more money. um, Although I'm not complaining, like it was a very exciting story or journey in the previous company. I just felt that if I could only find like a section in tech where I could build a for-profit business, but also have an impact on society. So as a first step, I was researching societal challenges. And well, if you look, it doesn't really matter where you turn today, but if you research societal challenges, you eventually come across loneliness as a topic. And I mean, in its most simple form, I mean, there's tons of research on it. So I'm just, in the interest of time, I'm just gonna be like oversimplify it. So if loneliness is such a big problem, why isn't there something called paid companionship readily available in a non-stigmatized way? And then when starting to talk to people about paid companionship, the default answer was always escort or call boy. So terms that are intertwined with paid intimacy. So for me, it was clear. So if these two topics are intertwined or at least associated in people's minds, then I need to better understand that industry as well. So I started doing some research on paid intimacy. And by the way, there's a reason I'm using paid intimacy as a word, or provider as a word, or paid companionship or paid sexual intimacy, as opposed to calling it sex work or sex worker. I felt that it more neutral terms are are better equipped for the full spectrum of companionship that we want to cover with our platform. So it's not because I want to sanitize certain terms. It's just that because I've used them previously when doing research with members of the community, and then I've used them in the wrong context. So when I was referring to someone as a sex worker, I often got the feedback, I don't consider myself a sex worker. I am, and then something else. So I just want to be mindful of that, especially when talking broadly about the topic or what we're doing with the company. So that's the reason why I'm making those references. Um, and then based on the research that I've done, and that's where I started reaching out to sex workers or community organizations to just understand, how does it work today? How does it like, what are some of the issues, the struggles, the challenges? And found that a lot of the difficulties or a lot of the challenges would actually be technically addressable from a technology standpoint. um, and yeah, and I think that's what really got us started on working on choice. And then we had a long discussion whether we leave companionship out of the picture and just focus on intimacy, or the other way around. And I felt that in order to really achieve the destigmatization impact that we want to achieve, they have to be together.
You can't separate the two.
Yeah, I still strongly believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, were you aware of the community and like much about sex work in general before you got into the research and started planting the seed of this concept that you wanted to birth? Were you really aware of what kind of challenges and issues that our community goes through? Or was it all kind of like new information for you at the time when you were doing your research?
It was new. I mean, new information in the sense that, so I talked to about 700 sex workers, mostly in Switzerland and Germany. So cautious of that sample as well. Like, also, there's also a bias in the selection, right? So the people that are open to talk to me or provide feedback, that's already a selection in itself from the community. But yeah, so it was surprising after this initial survey or outreach. The number one problem that I received as a feedback was work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was very unexpected, because for me it was like, being educated by the media. Well, educated is the wrong term, but informed or polarized
Right.
is the better term, by the media. Um, I thought it was safety, and everything around safety. So that was like a surprise from the initial research. But I'm fully aware that changes again by segment, and depending on who you're talking to.
Right. I mean, when you were conducting your research initially, too, I guess you might have gone through specific organizations that were available in Switzerland and Germany as well. Did you receive any pushback or hesitancy? Because I know we've talked separately about this, but like, our community can be quite guarded, very defensive, and especially when it's a non-sex worker or a member of like who is not from our community coming in. I don't want to say the word infiltrating, but gathering information and stuff like that. We can be very protective about our community. Just curious if you experienced any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it took so much time to actually get a reasonable number of people to talk to me or talk to us. So that was like months of cold calling, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I imagine you might have gotten shut down a couple times too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's on average. I think on average every 10th call was successful.
Wow. I mean,
And by successful, I mean answered.
yeah, I
The
was going
phone
to
was answered.
say. Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, like our community is quite guarded at times. And I'm sure we're going to bring this topic up later on as we kind of go into more about choice. And we have our reasons to be as well. But I would love for us to kind of dive deeper into, what is choice? We keep talking about it really lightly, but like, what is choice? Let's actually get into what this platform is and what you aim and hope to achieve with it.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, in short, Choice is a booking platform for paid companionship. And when I mean booking platform, it entails, like in this particular industry, it entails or has to entail several other things. So it entails payment, so deposits, escrow functionality, but it also entails like verification of the two parties involved in the meeting. So we effectively check the authenticity of a government issued ID and matching that with a recently taken selfie. So that's in short what Choice is or does.
Totally. Yeah. So, which is really exciting. Do you want to walk us through the process of how it works and how this might differ from other sites and other booking platforms like Trist and stuff like that?
Sure, yeah. So I think in like the biggest difference is that the booking process is handled through
Mm-hmm.
choice. So I
Right.
think none of the other platforms are doing that, except one that is predominantly available in Southeast Asia, called Smoochie. Um, but they don't handle the payment of it. So we're trying to, or we're our platform is basically embedding all the areas into one single platform. And well, so how it works, so first, from a provider perspective, there's a sign up as a provider, where you define the services you would like to offer, the pricing, and in the first step, what kind of profiles you would like to activate. So you can activate two sides of your profile on our platform. One is companionship, that has its own set of pictures, bio text, pricing, and services. And there's an intimacy side, which has its own images, pricing, services, and bio text as well. And there's also an FAQ section on each of the two. So if there's like something in particular, like a special safety protocol, additional screening, things that you want your clients to answer before they can even make a booking request, those go into the FAQs, and into the screening questions.
Right. And would those
Uh,
are those parts customizable, or is that something that's already kind of built in? You mentioned like, oh, if there's additional screening questions that you want to include, like, is that something that the provider can put in, or is that just going to be a standard universal kind of thing?
No, so FAQs and screening questions are at the liberty of the provider, so they can decide what to put in there. So it's free text fields with well, in the FAQs with an answer. Um, During the approval process, we review those because, of course, I mean, nothing in there can be illegal, right? So you cannot ask questions or provide answers to that would contain illegal activity. Um, so so after all of this is basically filled out, there's also functionality around hiding the profile to visitors from certain areas. So you could also say, I don't want my profile to be visible to visitors from a particular area or region. Yeah. Um, and then there's the publication request. So that's the final step. Publication request, which entails the age verification. So that's where we hand over to GBG, which is the tech that we're using that banks also use for client verification, that checks either a driver's license, passport, or ID and matches it with a selfie. And then there's the publication request. So publication is requested, and then we review the profiles. And we're going to document this as well. I'm working on an article to document this properly, publicly. But the review process basically entails verifying the images. So we understand the privacy is of utmost importance. So for providers that don't want to show their face on images, that's perfectly fine. We just need a verification picture to match or verify the image that is afterwards deleted. So of course there doesn't have to be, it's not mandatory to have your face on images publicly. Um, then we go through the services. So for example, there are certain client categories, like if providers want to offer services to people with disability or seniors that belong to an especially vulnerable category, then we just check in if there was previous experience with those customer groups, or if there's specific certification.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, you've thought about a lot of things, which is really exciting and really great to hear. Sorry to reiterate again, because I there are a lot of folks that are not in our industry as well, and I just kind of want to do some further defining as well, who are just listening as maybe a resource or just are curious about the stuff in general. So going back to defining companionship, paid companionship versus intimacy, when you are referring to those terms, so paid companionship is non-sexual, intimacy would be everything that can be sexual, or how would you put that in your own words?
Yeah. So when doing research on the customer side, we we identified certain customer segments that are currently not that don't have access to paid companionship as a whole, um, because the description is not precise enough and the safety features are not are not strong enough. So talk about female customers in the first place, you know. So when you talk to potential female customers to paid companionship, it's very clear that safety is the number one priority. So a platform that does not take care of the booking process, where you can provide feedback of behavioral guidelines being met or not, categorically excludes female customers. Um, and then there's other segments, like, for example, young professionals that are used to dating apps, and then are being redirected to directories where they where they're facing a user experience that is more similar to a phone book than anything else. So there is definitely a segment, and then there's a segment that uh, that is just looking for companionship, but can't book or request that anywhere. Um, for example, if you're just traveling and you want company to go to the opera or to have dinner or lunch, at like across the age groups or sexual orientations. So that's why we came up with these three service categories. So companionship being anything non-sexual and non-intimate. So that can be having coffee together, going for a walk, having dinner, lunch, going
Yeah,
to the opera, theater, etc.
truly platonic.
Then truly platonic and like no physical touch.
Right.
Then there's paid intimacy, which would include physical touch, but it's not sexual.
Mm-hmm.
So that can mean holding hands, hugging, proximity,
Right.
closeness, but nothing sexual.
Right.
And then there is paid sexual intimacy, which is basically sex work in the most stringent definition,
Mm-hmm.
which would include sexual interactions.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you for providing that, just in case people might be confused, or maybe people that are not quite sure at this moment. But that's super helpful, and really just understanding, again, the different categories that are in that. Flipping us over onto the client side, is it a similar process that they are also going through in terms of verification, sign up, and vetting?
Yeah, so I think so. I mean, just to share some real insights, like when we started this business, I when I well when I start a business, I picture the worst possible outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think about, can I stand behind this business in the worst possible outcome?
Mm-hmm.
So the worst possible outcome is client and provider meet, and there's some sort of violence
Right.
or overstepping. So that's the worst possible outcome. So for me, I never really wanted to be in a situation where I would have to face a victim and I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be able to say who it was.
Right, right.
So client verification was something that is deeply embedded into the platform from the beginning, and I would consider this to be a non-negotiable from a
Mm-hmm.
platform perspective. I mean, now there are other reasons for it, but so that's something that forms part of the like that. That's the basis. So you want access to this platform, and frankly, my personal opinion is you want access to this market. You should actually um, at
Comply.
least verify a document. Yeah. So
Right.
that's my personal opinion. Um, on our platform, you as a customer, you still have to go through. So you have to scan an ID, take a selfie, similar to the providers.
Mm-hmm.
What we are now seeing is there is a customer segment that has actually proactively reached out to us, and they have asked if they could have a profile too.
Okay.
So it's something that was unexpected, because we thought that, asking for ID verification was already asking a lot, given that
Right.
right now there is no such system or mandatory system in
Right.
place. But interesting enough, there's a group of customer, a segment of customers that have reached out individually, saying they would like to have a profile themselves that is more verified than just ID, where they can put their like
Wow.
an image of themselves, or like describe themselves a little bit, in order to shorten the time it takes for providers to establish trust or
Right.
screen.
Right.
So to
That's
reduce the back and
interesting.
forth messaging. And I think that's the intuition that we have about this market. There are lots of good customers, we think, or
Mm-hmm.
good clients.
Right.
They just need a platform to go on where that additional trust or readiness to take additional steps to verify is appreciated, or can also be shown, basically.
Wow, that's surprising to hear. I mean, it's so refreshing to hear that. Like, of course, yeah, we do have some really great clients that are out there that are wanting to be more proactive in that space and wanting to make things easier and just to speed up the booking process. On the flip side, of course, and this is probably a huge concern for a lot of full service sex workers or anyone that does any kind of in person work, is the reluctancy and hesitancy that clients are generally put out there in terms of not even wanting to provide their ID. And this is a huge issue that a lot of full service workers or providers face. It's a lot of like, I don't want to give my ID, that is private, blah, blah, blah. And really facing a lot of backlash there. And then at that point, it's just like, well, I'm not going to risk my safety or my life if you're not going to comply with my requests. Might be maybe a thing just in North America that we hear of, and that's where I'm based out of. But have you heard any feedback on your end for clients that are just not wanting to go there, or like you won't even be able to hear from people if they're not willing to comply?
So of course, of course, there are clients that don't want to comply with that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many rules and regulations a lot of people don't want to comply with, but have to.
Right.
So I think it's up to the and that's a difficult thing to do, because there's always a trade-off, right? Where you potentially lose a client by
Right.
insisting on strong or more thorough screening. So our intention is that, so talking to US clients as well,
Mm-hmm.
the feedback is that there is a higher resistance to share an identity document, because it's a direct transfer to the provider.
Right.
They effectively directly transfer a copy of their ID to the provider, which puts a lot of trust in what the provider does with that document.
Right.
At the same time, it exposes the provider to like like faked documents. Like, you have
Right.
to verify the authenticity of the document, right?
Totally.
Otherwise, what's the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that really led us to the conclusion that, so we think that if there's an escrow similar to us, like our platform, where you provide your ID and you take a selfie, but you don't provide it directly to the provider. You put it in escrow, or in a deposit, as a deposit, basically,
Mm-hmm.
to prove that you've gone through this process, but you don't have to directly share it with
Right.
each other, or
Mm-hmm.
reveal your real identity. So I think that's just one of the steps that could increase the percentage of clients going through ID verification.
Right, right. No, this makes a lot of sense. That can potentially work. Yeah, for sure. Continuing our conversation with verification and vetting, I know you have different kind of levels on the Choice website as well, in terms of like levels of verification. Did you perhaps want to just touch on that as well and explain that to the audience?
Sure, yeah, we just want to make sure that that it's visible to everyone
Mm-hmm.
what kind of verification we go through. And I mean, in the first step, what we want to be visible is that there is no way around the ID and selfie verification. That's the lowest level we have.
Right.
After that, it's verification through us basically as a company, either via chat or audio, video call, or in-person meeting, and then it's verification by other members of the community. So for customers, it's providers. For providers, it's customers.
Right.
That's what we're working on. I also want to just circling back to the ID verification.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to create the impression that ID verification makes the interaction or the client safe.
Right.
It's just
Right.
a step. It's a step that potentially filters out certain clients,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a safety guarantee, and I just want
Right.
to be clear about that. There are other tools and processes that probably need to be implemented or included in order to improve that. But
Mm-hmm.
what it still does is it enables us to prevent bad actors. So in the case of a bad actor, from re-entering the system
Right.
or the market,
Right.
which is something that I haven't seen in other tools so far. And I wouldn't know how they would do it without client ID verification, because
Right.
on any other platform, you can change your email, your phone number, and
Yes.
you can create a new account.
Right. Yeah.
With us, you cannot. So if you're blocked with an ID document. You would have to start forging a document so well that you could open a bank account with it.
Right. Right. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that too. Because yeah, you just said it there too. Like, what's to prevent people from bad actors just opening another email, another fake number, internet-based numbers and stuff like that, which happens a lot in our industry, unfortunately. So perhaps, yeah, this could be a way for it's more of a preventative measure and just eliminate these people from coming back and doing harmful things to sex workers. On that same topic, um, what is the process like, or what happens when something bad does happen to our provider? Um, can you tell us a little bit of those details in terms of like, okay, the meeting happened, this happened, are they able to report them? Is there any kind of like reporting system that Choice has that's implemented?
Yeah, sure. So at the time of so so maybe going through the booking process. So upon registration on the platform, every customer gets 5 free messages
Mm-hmm.
per account, not per provider. So per account. And then after those are used up, there's every message is paid,
Right, which
leading
is
up to
great.
a meeting or a booking request. So and then they can send a booking request, which is always for a specific location, a specific time and date that has to match the provider's availability. So providers provide availability, and clients can make requests based on that availability. So
Right.
if you clearly say you're not available on this day or at this time, clients cannot request that either. Um,
Awesome.
and then once the request is made, there are 3 options. So one is accept, reject, and then propose a new time and date.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working on a 4th one that is going to be custom offer.
Mm.
So if there's something that needs to be customized away from standard pricing, then that could be included in a custom offer. But
Amazing.
we're working on that.
Sure.
Once it's accepted, once the booking is accepted, and at the time of the booking request, the entire amount, so the entire fee of the booking is put into escrow. So debited from the payment method of the client into an escrow account with us, and stays there until the check-in happens. So check-in is happening at the time of the meeting, when the two people meet, by scanning a QR code that refreshes every 5 seconds to ensure that the QR code cannot be sent around, because we have to make sure that the verified people are also the ones that are meeting, and not somebody booking and then telling someone else where the meeting location is, etc.
Right.
So there's a check-in process, at which point the entire fee will be released to the provider. So from the escrow account to the provider's account, and then after the meeting, there is the feedback process. So we ask 2 questions. Number 1 is, were the behavioral guidelines met? So that's our choice code. And number 2 is, would you want to repeat this experience?
Right.
And that's where, if something goes wrong, you can report a violation of the behavioral guidelines. And then after that, so if that happens, then we investigate and can make sure that that we can recommend appropriate measures, whichever they be. I mean, we're working on this process, of course, with other organizations, but we've seen already now from I think the cases that we had so far on the platform would be categorized as boundary pushing. So those we were already able to avert, because we are, with the full prepayment, we are putting the provider in a stronger negotiation position where they will keep the money if there's boundary pushing that deviates from the booking conditions accepted during the booking process. That's the benefit of owning the booking process, is you can hold clients accountable to safety protocol, for example, or certain services offered as well. So if, for example, no sexual services is offered and clients insist that there should be, then you can just say no. Or if you see that in the chat message, I mean, already, then it can be rejected, but the money would still be forwarded to the provider.
Which is great. And even the idea of paid messaging too. I mean, yes, the first 5 are free, but also time wasting is a huge issue that we have in our quarter of the industry as well. People that actually have no intentions of booking and just want to chat for various reasons, to waste time, to whatever, get off or whatever they want to do. So that's really interesting to hear that you're able to embed that into your programming. Kind of going.
We're also working on a mechanism to report minor violations of the choice code.
Okay.
Not that they are minor in nature, but minor in the sense that you may want to report behavior that you don't want a client account to immediately get blocked forever. But just make sure others know that there was some sort of reportable misbehavior that was against the behavioral guidelines for this client. So it's sort of like a strike system.
Yeah, I was
that would be public.
That. Okay, yeah, and that's something that you're still working on currently, like maybe in beta mode, still working that out.
Right now, we only have blockage. Yeah, so there's a major violation of the choice code, and then the account gets blocked. What we're working on is the strike system. But I mean, when I say working on, that means it's going to be there within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, cool. I mean, well after this podcast is out, which is great. Talking about, obviously, like probably the biggest thing that everyone's wondering about is how you're able to deal with payment and incorporate that, because that is a huge topic, and obviously like a huge issue, a non-payment for folks that work in this industry. How are you able, and this is like a couple questions that did come in from Q&A, but I'm just going to allow you to speak to it, Arik, because it's a big topic.
Yeah, so where to start?
Where
So
to
I think
start?
in it. So maybe yeah, maybe in its most basic form, like for anti money laundering reasons, a payment transaction always needs to have at least three things. So two verified or identified parties, and a record of what the payment was for.
Right.
So if you're missing any of those, it's kind of shaky. So the other thing that payment providers really don't like are chargebacks.
Right. That's
So
huge.
somebody seeing a transaction on their statement that they say for whatever reason they don't want it there. I mean, technically speaking, you can only challenge transactions that you did not authorize, but that's the problem of chargebacks.
Right.
Clients can basically challenge any transaction on their card statement. There are, however, transaction categories that are excluded from chargebacks.
Okay.
So and those include conversions into like commodity or currency.
Okay.
So you cannot charge back a transaction on that. So the process that we've implemented is actually quite it's complex on the back end, but simple on the front end. And also requires us, for example, we're going through financial market authority regulation now in Switzerland. But basically, what the process does is, in the first step, there is a commodity transaction, and then the second transaction is again a currency or a fiat transaction.
Interesting.
So that's how we prevent people from filing chargebacks on this.
Right.
The other thing that puts us in a unique position is client verifications. So we can actually put the provider and the client and the booking record together.
Right.
So that's important in order for from a compliance perspective. And then the third, I think the third part is that we also have the selfie verification and the compliance with legal norms or regulations.
Right.
Yeah, globally, due to these service categories, because paid companionship is legal everywhere. So if there was a provider that provided availability in Zurich, we would show the entire service menu, including sexual intimacy.
Right.
Then there would be, after that, there would be a week of availability in New York where we would only show companionship services, for example.
Yeah,
so you would only be able to book companionship in the US.
Right.
So there's no way around that. We're not solving impossible problems to solve.
Right.
We are just trying to build a platform that can technologically be as good as it gets, with the current implications from legal frameworks.
Right. And just to reiterate again, if people missed it. So again, I am, if you are dealing with countries where sex work is criminalized, you won't be able to see the other two options there. So you mentioned just companionship, which is platonic, non-sexual. And then you also have the other category where it's intimacy, but it's a closer proximity, but nothing sexual. So, and then the third category would be sexual intimacy, which would not be available because that is illegal in the States. Correct? Great.
But for example, holding hands is also legal in the States.
Yes.
Like paying someone to hold hands is legal.
Right.
So that would even be an intimacy category service.
True. This is, I mean, I'm also just curious about and I feel like you touched on it a little bit earlier too, in the situations where, okay, I am based in the States. I'm a client. I'm going to book this service provider for the lowest denomination there, in terms of paid companionship. And then if they try to add on or try to boundary push, then they would probably go in the process of like that person might be banned, blocked, or the strike system that you're working on, it wouldn't be available, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
No, it would be. So it's always available.
right. I
So
mean,
the feedback mechanism is always available.
okay,
Um, I'm aware though, I mean, so again, we cannot fix problems that are right now not fixable, right? We
right.
have to stay within the legal boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but still, you would be able um, to go through a booking process and offer companionship. Of course, you cannot. So for to a boundary pusher, you would just have to say no because this was not booked, so this will not be provided, and they would have to be okay with that before the booking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Otherwise, but you would still, and if they would still try the boundary push, you'd be able to report that behavior. That would be a choice code violation.
Totally, totally. I'm going back to payment. And I don't know. I don't know if you could share, but like, have you
Mhm.
seen much success? I guess mainly in your region, in Switzerland or other areas in the EU. Versus, have there been any success stories here in North America yet, or we haven't quite gotten there yet? Because I know you launched earlier this year, so.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, we used so um, we position ourselves in Switzerland due to the jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm Swiss, so that was a natural place.
Right.
And then we started sort of a pilot in there,
Mm-hmm.
and to get more feedback and to build out the product better. And now we feel that we would like to understand the community in the English speaking markets, UK, the US, better, to understand what kind of, like, how we can support that community. Because
Right.
what we're seeing is the term screening, being very present in North America.
Right.
So we are wondering if verification of the identity document, scheduling payment, even if it's just for companionship services, would already help in terms
Mm-hmm.
of deposit, escrow, or also feedback mechanisms to actually ensure that people who should not have access to this market don't.
Right. I mean, in the US here, we're having, no, I'm not here. I'm not American. I'm Canadian, but in North America, we've had a lot of problems with like payment processors pulling out of, adult websites, adult platforms. Is this something that you have considered, or, it's something that might be hovering in the top of your mind? For example, Wish Tender just shut down last week. Of course, Visa pulling out of certain booking sites like Tris and stuff like that. Um, have you thought about this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean that's like top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, our approach to this is, one, staying within legality, and B, client verification, in order to effectively prevent chargebacks from happening through client verification, but also through the payment mechanism in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I haven't seen, or I haven't come across platforms that have done that in that way.
Right.
Um, so I think that's the novelty, or that's why we think that's what differentiates us from the other platforms, and
Mm-hmm.
why we believe banks or payment processors like the ones we're using now shouldn't have a problem. I mean, that's the case we want to make, right?
Right.
In the
In
end
an
of the
ideal
day,
situation.
like, long term, we want to make the case for decriminalization,
Totally.
but we
Absolutely.
can't make the case right now from outside of a legal framework. So we have to operate in a legal framework to show or to prove. And I mean, with payment processing, it's really all about proving, right? You
Right.
have to prove that you can maintain a very, very high ratio of approved and verified and valid transactions over a long course.
Right.
So as long as we can prove that, we don't I we don't have any concerns in terms of being shut down, because we're operating in a legal market with legal services in a legal environment, and have arguably stronger safety or verification measures than any other online shop. I mean, when you shop online, what you never scan your ID right next to your
Right.
credit card. You just put your credit card, and the credit card could be anyone's,
Right. True.
as long as it's a valid one. With us, that's not possible, right? So and that's also why I think, in order to have a payment system in the market, you have to have the extended system connected to it as well. You can't just say, hey, use this to make any kinds of payments anywhere
Right.
without anyone being verified. Like that doesn't work from an anti-money laundering perspective.
Right.
But if you build a booking platform where you say, everybody's verified with an ID document and a selfie, there's a clear booking record. From our perspective, that's what got us through these initial payment processing audits.
Right. Right. I mean, in your research too, in terms of like other competitors, has there been anyone else that has done this before in the past? Like, and if so, like, why hasn't that been successful in the past, or is it a matter of timing?
I think timing mattered. I'm not sure how much, though. I think it mattered on the investment side.
Okay.
It may have mattered as well in terms of the like societal openness part, but I'm not sure how strong of a factor that was. So I've talked to two founding teams. So one was in Australia, called Rendezvous, and the other one was Olala from Germany. So those were two platforms that tried something similar, but so I think both of the platforms were pre OnlyFans.
Okay. Yeah.
So there was arguably a larger stigma on the sector in general, and a higher hesitance to ID scanning. So OnlyFans really introduced like ID verification for creators, right?
Right.
And reduce the barrier for that. Now we're trying to just take it one step further and say, clients should also verify.
Absolutely.
So that's the step further. Why they didn't work? So I think one of them said they had a revenue model that didn't work for them. The other one said that just the bookings or the booking process was not enough revenue for them to sustain. So they actually made the case to build a directory, which is kind of odd, right? Because directories, how they make money is ads.
Right.
Ads that they charge to providers. So when you want, I think when you want to understand what interests a company has, you need to look at the business model. So an advertising directory wants to make as much advertising revenue.
Of course.
So they don't have any interest in whether a meeting happens and about the quality of the meeting.
Right.
Our business model is based on successful transactions. So we want as many, successful meetings to happen as possible.
Of course.
And I think it's important for platforms to have an incentive in that, because then they start implementing. And I'm not saying we're the holy grail of safety and everything. We're just trying to build the best platform as good as we can with the feedback we get from the community. But then you start building and caring for how well the meetings actually go.
Yeah, it all goes hand in hand, right? It's all related. So I do want to also touch on or ask like how has the response been? Because now it's been, I think you launched in January 2024. How has the response been from then until now?
So I think so it's been so it was a soft launch
Mm-hmm.
back in January. So we wanted to make sure that we have the opportunity to improve the system
Right.
based on meetings happening on the platform. So that's really what we spent Q1 and Q2 on,
Mm-hmm.
mostly. That now we feel that we're in a position to be ready to go out broader, to yeah to go out broader. So right now there's 2,000 registered users, about 1,500 customers, and
Wow.
500 providers that
Mm-hmm.
registered with phone, and 10% of those went through the ID verification system. So still
Wow.
in the early days,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that the hardest has really been, or still remains to be, is the community credibility,
Oh, of
right?
course.
So
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
tricky.
that is the biggest challenge, but we're working on it. I mean, we're answering all the questions. We're more than happy for any feedback coming from the community. We're also happy to, of course, pay for any consulting
Mm-hmm.
engagements. Yeah, if it helps us build a better platform, then we're totally up for it.
Which I think is really great because a lot of the times companies forget to consult with us a lot of the time. So it's really nice to hear that you're taking an active approach to this. Um, but before we talk about like the future of choice, I also wanted to touch on like the 555 model. I know we talked about this before in our previous conversations, but like I think it's really maybe a good way to wrap things up and also just to highlight that because I think it's such a great idea. But I'd love to hear about what Choices of 555 model is all about.
Sure, yeah. So I think I first learned about the 111 model
Mm-hmm.
from Salesforce,
Right.
the CRM system, and I got inspired by it and thought that given the industry that we would like to operate in, we should multiply it by five. So what it means is 5% of our equity, 5% of our profits, and 5% of our employees' time go into a foundation that then deploys this capital or this time, these resources, into the provider community.
Amazing.
The idea is that we embed the the community aspect into the business model or into the business early,
Mm-hmm.
so that as the company grows, the amount or the resources we're giving back to the community also grow. And I
Right.
think that's the larger you get, the harder it becomes to implement it on such a fundamental level.
Right. That's super great to hear. And I hope that, again, we could just stick with this. And I'm hoping that people will be responsive to this. And I'm really hoping that you get a lot of good feedback as well from the community. It's so hard to trust people sometimes. It's so hard to trust companies. Sometimes we just don't know what the intentions are behind the scenes and stuff too. But I'm hoping with this episode, everyone is welcome to have an open mind. Arik is available if you want to speak with him. Um, because I am not going to claim that I'm an expert on this. I have dabbled my toes for a few years doing, paid sexual intimacy many, many years ago, but it's changed so much. So like, I'd really love to open up this discussion to folks in the community and encourage you to reach out to Arik as well. So, and speaking of which, there are a few questions that did come in from the audience, mainly from Twitter. Some of which we have might have already answered as well, but these are just real concerns that or challenges that the community does see. So we'll quickly go into those right now. So the first one did come in from the UK. So with the impact of the decrim movement, which is happening here in the UK, I'm curious to know how any payment platform will circumnavigate the restrictions. Um, if you want to quickly reiterate what we said earlier, you're welcome to.
Sure, yeah. So in the UK, we have the example of sex work is technically legal. So paid sexual intimacy is legal, but solicitation is not.
Right. Same in
Uh,
Canada.
so yeah, so basically, advertising is not legal. So in the UK, we have the same thing. We have to operate as companionship,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the services that you can actively book on choice for meeting locations in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
That, however, doesn't decrease the value of having a system that checks identity and manages payment for the interaction leading up to the booking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to the decrim movement, maybe. So as I mentioned before, our vision is to impact policy as well in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Mm-hmm.
And although that's a very long-term vision, of course, there are activities that we're pursuing now already. So we had 2 meetings with the UK government already, one with
Amazing.
Ofcom, one with the Independent Pornography Review, as part of their Online Safety Act that they have released.
Mm-hmm.
So there are activities taking place now, and there is a certain openness or readiness from government entities to engage with us or to engage with new sex tech companies that are more open and willing to collaborate or to cooperate,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the large companies or large tech platforms are not.
Right. Yeah. As mentioned, like I don't see this very often. So again, really refreshing and nice for you to take on this challenge and consult with us. So thank you on that. In addition to the first question, a little bit similar with the second question too. This person's writing in from Canada, also from Twitter. Many sites have offered digital payment, but payment processors have pulled out or suddenly become unavailable within the first year. Visa becoming unavailable on Trist, Stripe becoming unavailable on Wish Tender. How do they intend to avoid this? Is it possible to avoid this from happening as their site becomes more popular over time?
Yeah, so our approach to this, I think, is unique in the sense that clients are verified.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really look at collapses of these platforms, like for example, Wish Tender, I think, well, I've done not extensive research on it, but on Wish Tender, credit card fraud was a big issue
Right.
that they were facing.
Mm-hmm.
So people just stealing credit cards and then being able to make transactions with those. That's not impossible on choice, but very, very hard. Like you would literally have to um, steal someone's wallet while they're asleep and then still be there to take a selfie,
Yeah.
while you go through the verification process with them. And then you would have to schedule a meeting and they would have to check into that meeting again. So it's a very cumbersome process
Right.
to achieve the same result. If you can just take a credit card and process $2,000 for a transaction for, I don't know, a wish list item,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very different exposure to fraud.
Right.
So I think that puts us in a more stable, in a way more
Position.
stable position. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing is us going through Financial Market Authority um, uh, registration and verification. So becoming, legally speaking, a fintech or a certified
Mm.
fintech in a country like Switzerland will also open up new opportunities that we're exploring, but I wouldn't feel comfortable, commenting right now.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
So I think those are the key. I think the key angles for addressing these issues.
No, definitely. And then the last question, also from Canada, how do they intend to market themselves and provide site traffic from potential clients? And how do they intend to reach our potential clients?
Yeah. So that's where we cannot magically
Right.
build or create web traffic, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of web traffic already. It's just on other sites.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way we would like to position ourselves is kind of a Calendly approach.
Mm-hmm.
So you can create a profile on Choice for free. Doesn't cost anything ever, and then you get a booking link either for the companionship section or for the intimacy section. So you get two different booking links that you can then use in autoresponders from directories. So if somebody contacts you via Trist, via email, or via WhatsApp, you could have an autoresponder that says, to go through the booking, here's my choice link.
Right.
And then choice contains the screening questions that you want to be answered, has the FAQs, has all the booking conditions that you want clients to accept when making the request, or things they need to read through in order to accept the payment as well.
Right.
You can do that. So that's really our approach to getting traffic. So it's not traffic that we will be able to generate in the short term, but we're happy to collaborate with everyone who's open to that, covering the advertising fees on those platforms, if in return we're included in the autoresponder.
Interesting. And I guess maybe that would kind of similarly be another approach too, because there's a lot of providers that have their own website. I guess there would be kind of a redirect or click this button if you want to try to book, and then that would essentially would go back to choice, so they can do all the screening process, payments all over there, correct?
Yeah, and some of the providers have done that already. So that gives us this indication that there is a case or a problem to be solved. So we actually have several providers who on their website state that my preferred booking platform is Choice, and here's the Choice link. So that's
Awesome.
kind of that's the best case scenario.
Amazing. Well, there's lots of things to look forward to here, and this is, potentially a company that, listeners, you might want to keep your eye on. Feel free to check it out. I mean, Arik, can you please plug all the places we can get in touch with you, but also the website where we can find you as well? I think it's saferchoice.ch, but correct me if I'm wrong. Where can we all find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Saferchoice.ch, choice.ch, they all work.
Yes. And you're also available on X as well, which you've been responding to a lot of messages on there as well. What was the handle for that one as well?
That's Safer Choice CH, one word.
Perfect. Well, it was great chatting with you. I hope I didn't put you in the hot seat too much, but there's lots of really valid questions here, and really a fantastic piece of technology that I'm looking forward to hearing more about, and hopefully to get you a bit more feedback too from the community directly. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Thank you.
No, the thanks is all from our side. Thanks a lot for having me, and happy to answer any more questions. I mean, this is a work in progress. Nothing is written in stone. So we're trying to really build this together with the community, if the community lets us.
For sure. And if anyone else wants to get in touch with myself, you can do so on X. It's Stripped by Sia. I'm on Instagram, which is Stripped by Sia Podcast, strippedbysia.com if you want to go ahead and pitch yourself to be on the show, if you want to get in touch with myself. It is new episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight Pacific Standard Time. And what else do I need to plug? Patreon.com/strippedbysia. And I think that's it for today. Arik, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm really looking forward to kind of next steps and future of choice with you. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
And stop. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellanderama, and photography by Ian Daverin.